Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I am Desinta Alfina with the student number G1E020005. And in here, I would like to present the material about minimal pairs. Next, what is minimal pairs? Minimal pairs is a two words that vary by only single sound, usually meaning sound that might confuse English learners, like the and v in fan and fan, or in the a and e in dex and dix. And also, the definition of minimal pairs is the two words of minimal pairs is have a different meaning. And an example for English vowel. Minimal pair E and E, for example, is sit and seat. Minimal pair A and E, for example, is dex and dix. Minimal pair A, for example, is wet and wade. Minimal pair of A and A, for example, is bed and butt. Minimal pair L and O, for example, is so and so. Minimal pair O and O, for example, is not and note. Minimal pair A and A, for example, is bed and bed. Minimal pair A and for example, is farce and words. Minimal pair A and A, for example, is head and heart. Minimal pair minimal pair O and O, for example, is coat and coat. Minimal pair L and O, for example, is no and now. Next, an example for English consonant now. Minimal pair B and V, for example, is berry and very. Minimal pair B and P, for example, is buy and pie. Minimal pair N and for example, is thin and thing. Minimal pair L and R, for example, is alive and arrive. Minimal pair of Ch and Th, for example, is catch and cat. Minimal pair S and Sh, for example, is she and she. Minimal pair F and V, for example, is fan and van. Minimal pair of and H, for example, is fat and hat. Minimal pair F and Th, for example, is free and tree. Minimal pair S and Th, for example, is sing and think. Minimal pair of Z and Z with this. Minimal pair Ch and Z, for example, is page and pace. Minimal pair of D and J, for the example, is bed and page. Minimal pair of V and P, for example, is coffee and copy. Minimal pair of Q and K is quick and kick. Minimal pair of Ch and J is cheese and jeep. Minimal pair Ch and Sh, for example, is chair and share. Minimal pair D and Th, for example, is they and they. Minimal pair of Th and Th, for example, is 3 and 3. Next, initial consonant sound. For example, is minimal pair initial F and P, for example, is fast and pass. Minimal pair initial K and G, for example, is cam and game. Minimal pair initial T and D, for example, is to and do. Minimal pair initial V and W, for example, is fow and wow. Minimal pair initial g and w, for example, is gate and wait. Minimal pair initial h and r, for example, is hat and rat. Minimal pair initial r and w, for example, is rich and rich. Minimal pair initial j and y, for example, is Joe and your. Minimal pair initial w and no w is where and air. Minimal pair initial h and no h, for example, is hate and ate. Next, final consonant sound. Minimal pair final k and g, for example, is pack and big. Minimal pair final and n, for the example, is m and n. Minimal pair final t and d, for example, is head and head. Minimal pair final s and z, for example, is bus and buzz. Minimal pair final n and for example, is tin and thing. Minimal pair final and n, for example, is thing and thing. Minimal pair final j and g, for example, is h and ag. Minimal pair final ch and g, for example, is catch and catchy. Now identifying minimal pairs. For the word cat and pet, is it my minimal pair? Yes, because only k and p are different. And white and wise, is it minimal pair? Yes, because only d and z are different. You can only see in here. I would go to the next slide. Minimal pairs and set. Phonemic distinction in a language can be tested via minimal pairs and minimal set. For the definition is minimal pairs when two words are identical in form except for a contrast in one phoneme occurring in the same position. For example, pet and pet, fan and van, pet and pat, side and side. They are minimal pairs in the phonology of English. Minimal set. Minimal set is when a group of words can be differentiated each one from the others by changing one phoneme in the same position in the word. For example, feed, feet, fat, food, food. It is a vowel phonemes. And big, rig, fig, dig, weak is a consonant phonemes. Yes, that's all for my presentation. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.